My in-laws gifted us a honeymoon but secretly booked themselves in the adjoining room. When they accidentally walked in on us, my husband laughed it off. So, I filed for an annulment the next morning and left them on the island. "It's our gift to you," my mother-in-law Carol beamed, handing us the envelope at our wedding reception. 2 weeks in Bali. All expenses paid. David, my brand new husband, hugged her tightly. "Mom, this is too much." It was too much, but not in the way he meant. I remember staring at the glossy brochure that fell out of the envelope. A luxury resort on the shores of Nusa Dua, with infinity pools overlooking the Indian Ocean and private villas nestled among tropical gardens. It looked like paradise. This is. I struggled to find the right words, overwhelmed by the extravagance. "Perfect," Carol finished for me, patting my arm. "Only the best for our David and his bride." Even then, something about the way she said it made me uneasy. His bride. Not you or our new daughter. Just an accessory to David. I brushed it off as wedding day nerves and smiled back at her. "Thank you so much, Carol. And you too, Phil," I added, nodding to my father-in-law who stood beside her, hands clasped behind his back, nodding approvingly. "Consider it our first family contribution," Phil said, his voice carrying that distinctive tone of a man who was used to being listened to. "We take care of our own." David was over the moon. "See, Emma?" he whispered as his parents moved on to chat with other guests. "I told you they'd come around. They love you already." I wasn't so sure about that. Throughout our 2-year relationship, Carol and Phil had been cordial but distant. There were always little comments, subtle digs about my career as a high school art teacher. "So you just draw with children all day?" My modest upbringing, no European vacations growing up. Not even one? Or my independent streak, "You're not one of those feminists, are you, dear?" David insisted they were just old-fashioned, that they needed time to adjust to their only son dating someone less traditional than they'd expected. I tried to win them over with thoughtful gifts, engaging conversation, and endless patience when Carol rearranged my table settings at dinner parties or when Phil questioned my political views. Nothing seemed to fully bridge the gap. So this honeymoon gift felt like a breakthrough, a genuine acceptance into the Walker family. Maybe marriage was the threshold I needed to cross to be truly welcomed. The next month was a whirlwind of wedding cleanup, thank you notes, and honeymoon preparations. David and I had been living together in our small apartment for a year, but now everything felt different. We were husband and wife. We'd made vows. This was forever. Carol called almost daily with suggestions about what to pack, which restaurants to try in Bali, even offering to take me shopping for appropriate resort wear. I gently declined the shopping trip, explaining that I'd already bought new clothes for the trip. "Oh," she'd said, sounding disappointed. "Well, I'm sure what you've chosen is nice." The day before our departure, she showed up at our apartment with a medium-sized suitcase. "Just a few essentials," she explained, rolling it into our living room. "Specialty sunblock, after sun care, stomach medication, the food can be so unpredictable there, and a few outfits I picked up that would look lovely on you, Emma." I opened the suitcase to find designer resort wear, all in Carol's preferred palette of pastels and florals, nothing like my usual style of bold colors and clean lines. "That's so thoughtful, Carol," I said, managing a smile. "But I'm not sure I have room in my luggage." "Don't be silly. Just leave behind some of your things. These are much more suitable for Bali." She patted my cheek. "Trust me, dear. I know these places." David, ever the peacekeeper, jumped in. "Mom, you didn't have to do all this." "Of course I did," she replied, straightening his collar in a gesture so maternal it immediately infantilized him. "It's your honeymoon. Everything needs to be perfect." After she left, I turned to David. "That was a lot." "She's just excited for us," he said, already unzipping the suitcase to examine its contents. "And hey, this stuff is nice. Probably worth thousands." "But it's not me," I said quietly. "I don't need your mom to dress me." David sighed, wrapping his arms around me. "Just take a few pieces to make her happy. We don't have to use the rest." I agreed, selecting the least objectionable items, a sun hat and a beach cover-up, and repacked my own suitcase. It was a small battle not worth fighting. We were about to have 2 weeks of uninterrupted paradise together, far away from Carol's influence. At least, that's what I thought. The flight to Denpasar was long but comfortable, with Carol and Phil's gift including business-class seats. David held my hand during takeoff, both of us giddy with excitement. "I can't believe we're married," he whispered, kissing my knuckles. "Mrs. Walker." I'd actually kept my last name, Richardson, something Carol had frowned upon when I'd mentioned it months ago. David had supported my decision, though I sometimes wondered if he'd just agreed to avoid conflict rather than genuinely understanding my desire to maintain that part of my identity. "I can't believe we're going to Bali," I replied, sidestepping the name issue yet again. "It's like a dream." And it did feel dreamlike when we arrived, the fragrant tropical air, the lush greenery, the crystalline waters of the beaches visible as we drove from the airport to our resort. The fatigue of 20 hours of travel melted away as our car pulled into the circular drive of the lagoon resort and spa. Staff greeted us with cold towels and fragrant welcome drinks, garlanding us with frangipani flowers before leading us through open-air corridors to our honeymoon suite. The room was stunning, a massive king bed draped in white netting, sliding glass doors opening to a private terrace, a bathroom bigger than our entire apartment with an indoor-outdoor shower and a soaking tub strewn with rose petals. "This is incredible," I breathed, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. David tipped the bellhop and joined me at the window. "Worth the flight?" "Worth everything," I said, leaning back against him as he wrapped his arms around my waist. We spent that first afternoon exploring the resort, multiple swimming pools, a pristine beach, several restaurants and bars, a spa that promised traditional Balinese treatments. It was more luxurious than anywhere I'd ever stayed, and I felt a genuine surge of gratitude toward my in-laws for making it possible. After a sunset dinner on the beach, we returned to our suite, tired but happy. The turn-down service had been, with more rose petals scattered across the bed and soft music playing from hidden speakers. "Shower?" David suggested, a glint in his eye. I grinned. "Racy there." We were halfway undressed, laughing and kissing our way toward the bathroom, when a sharp knock came at a door I hadn't noticed before, a connecting door on the far wall of the suite that must lead to an adjoining room. David and I froze, staring at each other in confusion. Before either of us could respond, the door swung open. And there they stood, Carol and Phil, beaming like they'd planned the biggest surprise. Because they had. "We're right next door," Carol squealed, clapping her hands together. She wore a floral caftan that billowed around her as she stepped into our room. "We got the adjoining room. Isn't that fantastic? We can do everything together." I instinctively grabbed my shirt from the floor, clutching it against my chest. David stood shirtless, mouth open in shock. "Mom?" He finally managed. "Dad? Why are you here?" Phil chuckled, stepping in behind Carol. "Surprise. We thought, why gift a honeymoon when we could join the adventure?" He glanced around appreciatively. "Beautiful accommodations. Our room is nearly identical, though I think your bathtub is slightly larger." I couldn't speak. My brain was struggling to process what was happening. David's parents. Here. In Bali. In the room next to ours. On our honeymoon. David laughed. Actually laughed. "Mom, you're crazy." "Not Mom, what are you doing here?" Or "Mom, this is our honeymoon." Just acceptance. Like this was normal. Like our private, romantic getaway being hijacked by his parents was a delightful twist rather than a boundary-crushing invasion. "We thought it would be fun," Phil explained, wandering deeper into our suite and examining the fruit basket on the table. "Plus, we know all the best restaurants. We came here for our 25th anniversary." I stood frozen, still gripping my shirt, acutely aware that 5 minutes ago I had been about to make love to my husband for the first time as a married couple. Now his parents were discussing dinner options for tomorrow. "We'll let you get settled," Carol said, winking at David. "Dinner at 7? There's a gorgeous Indonesian restaurant near the main pool. I've already made reservations for 4. They left the connecting door open when they walked out. The moment they were gone, I turned to David. "What just happened?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking bemused rather than upset. "I guess they decided to join us. That's something." "Something?" I repeated, finally pulling my shirt back on with shaking hands. "David, they're on our honeymoon." "Our honeymoon?" "They probably just wanted to see Bali again," he offered, sitting on the edge of the bed. "And it was their gift, so that gives them the right to intrude on what should be the most romantic trip of our lives?" My voice rose slightly, and I forced myself to take a deep breath. "This isn't normal, David." He frowned. "They're just being nice. It's their gift. We should be grateful." Grateful? The word tasted bitter in my mouth. They didn't tell us they were coming. They booked the room next door. They left the connecting door open like we don't deserve privacy. "I'll close the door," he said, getting up to do just that. "And I'll talk to them about knocking." I watched him lock the connecting door, feeling a sinking sensation in my stomach. He didn't get it. He didn't see the fundamental violation of what should have been our private time as newlyweds. "We should change hotels," I said suddenly. David turned, genuinely shocked. "What? No. We can't do that." "Why not?" "Because they'd be devastated. And they paid for everything." "So we're trapped here? With your parents 10 feet away for our entire honeymoon?" He came back to sit beside me, taking my hands in his. "It won't be that bad. We'll do some things together, some things separately. It'll work out." I wanted to argue more, but exhaustion from the travel and the shock of the situation overwhelmed me. Let's just go to bed, I said, pulling away from him. I'm tired. That night, I lay awake beside David, listening to his soft snores and staring at the connecting door, wondering what I had gotten myself into. The next morning, a cheerful knock came at that same door at 7 a.m. David was in the shower, so I pulled on a robe and cautiously answered. Carol stood there in full makeup and resort wear, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Good morning, dear. I thought we could all have breakfast together. Phil's already securing a table at the beachfront cafe. I blinked at her, still groggy. It's 7 in the morning. Early start catches the best of the day, she chirped. Where's David? Showering, I replied, tightening my robe's belt. We were planning to sleep in a bit. Jet lag. She waved this off. Nonsense. Best way to beat jet lag is to get on local time immediately. Tell David to hurry. The breakfast buffet gets picked over by 8. Before I could reply, she turned and headed back to her room, leaving the connecting door ajar again. I closed it with a bit more force than necessary and slumped against it. This was going to be a long 2 weeks. David emerged from the bathroom, toweling his hair. Was that my mom? Yes, I said flatly. We're having breakfast with them in 30 minutes, apparently. To my surprise, he grimaced. I kind of hoped to have breakfast in bed with you. A small flicker of hope lit within me. We could say we're still tired and order room service. He considered it for a moment, then shook his head. Nah, let's just go. Mom will keep knocking if we don't, and you know how she gets when she feels ignored. That flicker of hope extinguished as quickly as it had appeared. Breakfast set the pattern for the days that followed. Carol always had a plan, an itinerary, recommendations that were really mandates. We visited temples as a foursome, took a cooking class as a foursome, even had couples massages in the same room. I tried to carve out time just for David and me, suggesting sunset walks on the beach or dinners at restaurants on the far side of the resort, but somehow, Carol and Phil always materialized. Oh, what a coincidence. We were just about to have dinner too. The sunset is gorgeous from this beach. Phil, take a picture of the four of us. David never objected. Never created boundaries. Never pulled me aside to acknowledge the absurdity of spending our honeymoon with his parents as constant chaperones. On the third night, I finally confronted him in our room after yet another dinner with Carol and Phil. This isn't a honeymoon, I said, kicking off my sandals. This is a family vacation where we happen to sleep in a different room. David sighed, loosening his collar. They're just trying to make sure we have a good time. But we're not, I countered. At least, I'm not. We haven't had a single meal alone. We can't relax by the pool without your mother commenting on my sunscreen application technique. We haven't been able to be intimate without worrying they'll knock or call or somehow interrupt. He had the grace to look uncomfortable at that last point. We'd made love exactly once since arriving, early in the morning with the shower running to mask any sounds, like teenagers sneaking around under their parents' roof. Look, he said, sitting beside me on the bed. I know it's not ideal. But they mean well. And it's only for 2 weeks, 2 weeks of our honeymoon, I emphasized. A once-in-a-lifetime trip that's being hijacked. He put an arm around me. I'll talk to them tomorrow. Ask for a bit more space. Promise? I looked up at him, needing to believe this could be salvaged. Promise, he said, kissing my forehead. I wanted to believe him. I really did. The next day, Carol knocked at 6:30 a.m., insisting we all take a sunrise yoga class together. David mumbled an excuse about wanting to sleep in but made no mention of needing more privacy or space. After yoga, which Carol spent correcting my poses while the instructor looked on in annoyance, David disappeared with Phil to check out the resort's golf facilities. I retreated to our suite, hoping for an hour alone to read and recharge. 15 minutes later, a keycard sounded at our main door. Thinking it was housekeeping, I called out, "Could you come back later, please?" Instead, Carol walked in, carrying shopping bags. "There you are. I've been looking all over for you." I sat up on the daybed, startled. "You have a key to our room?" "Of course, dear," she said, setting the bags down. "I had the front desk add me to your room access. Much more convenient this way." She began unpacking the bags, laying out dresses and tops on our bed. "I found these at the resort boutique. Much more flattering than those boxy things you packed." I stared at her in disbelief. "You got a key to our honeymoon suite without asking us?" She barely glanced up. "David wouldn't mind. And this way I don't have to keep knocking." The violation of privacy was so blatant I could barely form words. "Carol, that's not appropriate." She straightened, fixing me with a cool stare. "What's not appropriate is how you've been keeping David away from us. He always makes time for family. Before you." The accusation was so unfair I almost laughed. We haven't had a single moment alone this entire trip. You and Phil are constantly there. We're making memories, she said primly. Family memories? Something you wouldn't understand, coming from such a... She paused, searching for a word, unconventional background. My parents' divorce when I was 12 was apparently still fair game for her judgment. I need you to give me your key to our room, I said, holding out my hand. And I need some space. Alone. Now. She looked genuinely shocked that I would speak to her that way. Well, I never. I was only trying to help you fit in with the family better. These clothes would be a start. She gathered her purse but left the clothes spread across our bed. I'll tell the front desk there's been a mistake with my key. Technical issues. After she left, I called the front desk and explicitly told them to remove all access except for David and me, and to not allow any changes without both of us present with ID. The clerk sounded uncomfortable but complied. When David returned from golfing, I told him about his mother accessing our room and trying to replace my clothes. He frowned. She shouldn't have gotten a key, that's crossing a line. Finally, I thought. Finally he sees it. But, he continued, she's probably just trying to help you feel more comfortable around them. You do dress a bit differently than what they're used to. And there it was. Even in acknowledging a boundary violation, he was defending her intentions and subtly suggesting I was the problem. That's not the point, David, I said, feeling a familiar frustration rising. The point is that your mother doesn't respect our privacy or my autonomy. And you keep making excuses for her. I'm not making excuses, he insisted. I'm just explaining where she's coming from. Where she's coming from is a place of entitlement and control, I countered. And you enable it. His jaw tightened. That's not fair. She's my mother. She loves me. And I'm your wife, I reminded him. You promised to prioritize us, our marriage, just a week ago in your vows. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd come to recognize as his conflict avoidance tell. Can we not fight? We're in paradise. Are we? I asked quietly. Because it doesn't feel like paradise to me. He suggested we go to the beach alone, a peace offering of sorts. I agreed, desperate for any slice of normal honeymoon experience. For 2 hours, it was lovely, swimming in the clear turquoise water, lying on loungers side by side, sharing a cocktail with 2 straws. Then Phil appeared with his camera, asking if we wanted photos, and the bubble burst. That evening, Carol suggested a special dinner at the resort's most exclusive restaurant. Just the 4 of us, she said, as if that was a treat rather than the default of the past 5 days. I was putting on my makeup when David came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. You look beautiful, he murmured, kissing my neck. For a moment, it felt like us again. Then his phone buzzed with a text from Carol, asking what tie he was wearing so Phil could coordinate. The restaurant was admittedly spectacular, perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, with tables spread far apart for privacy. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the water, and despite everything, I felt a glimmer of romance as David held my chair for me. Carol dominated the conversation as usual, detailing their plans for a day trip to Ubud tomorrow. You'll love the monkey forest, Emma, though we're closed shoes. One tried to snatch my bracelet last time. I smiled and nodded, having given up on asserting any preferences. Under the table, David squeezed my hand, a silent apology or encouragement, I wasn't sure which. After the main course, David excused himself to use the restroom. The moment he was gone, Carol leaned toward me. You know, Emma, marriage is about compromise, she said, her voice soft but pointed. David has always been part of a close-knit family. That's not going to change just because you think you deserve all his attention. I set down my fork. With all due respect, Carol, this is our honeymoon. It's the one time we should have each other's undivided attention. She smiled tightly. Such a modern perspective. In my day, we understood that marriage meant joining families, not creating isolated little bubbles. We're not in your day, I replied, surprising myself with my directness. And while I respect your relationship with David, our marriage needs space to grow on its own terms. Phil, who had been silent through this exchange, cleared his throat. Carol, perhaps we should give the kids a day to themselves tomorrow. Carol shot him a look of betrayal. We already made plans for Ubud. We can go to Ubud another day, he suggested, and I felt a surge of unexpected gratitude toward my father-in-law. David returned before Carol could argue further. The rest of the dinner passed in strained pleasantries, with Carol making pointed comments about family traditions and the proper way to be a walker. When we returned to our rooms, David surprised me by suggesting a nightcap on our terrace. Just us, he said with a smile that reminded me of why I'd fallen for him in the first place. We sat under the stars, drinking wine and talking like we used to before wedding planning and family dynamics had consumed our conversations. I began to relax, to hope that maybe we could salvage some part of this honeymoon. David kissed me, a real kiss full of promise, and we moved inside, leaving the wine forgotten. In our bedroom, he pulled me close, his hands finding the zipper of my dress. "I've missed you," he whispered, and I knew exactly what he meant. With his parents always around, always interrupting, we'd barely had any intimate moments since arriving. "I've missed you too," I replied, helping him with the buttons of his shirt. We fell onto the bed together, laughing softly when he got tangled in his pants. It felt normal, natural, the way things should be between newlyweds. And then, the moment shattered. A knock at the connecting door, followed immediately by it opening. "Oops," Carol giggled, standing there in a silk robe, staring directly at us in our state of undress. "Just looking for the sunscreen I left in your bathroom earlier." David pulled the sheet up, laughing awkwardly. "Mom, come on." "Oh please, I changed your diapers," she said, not leaving, not even looking away as she rummaged through our bathroom. "Don't mind me." I lay frozen, mortified, as my mother-in-law invaded what should have been the most private moment between my husband and me. "Found it," she announced, holding up a tube of sunscreen. "Don't let me interrupt." "Good night, dears." She left, closing the door behind her but not before giving David a theatrical wink. The mood was irreparably broken. David rolled onto his back, sighing. "Well, that was awkward." "Awkward?" I repeated, sitting up and pulling the sheet around me. "David, your mother just walked in on us about to have sex and didn't even apologize." He shrugged. "She was looking for her sunscreen." "At 10 p.m.? In our bathroom? When she has the exact same bathroom next door." He frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying she did it on purpose," I said, lowering my voice even though I wanted to scream. "She's been sabotaging any chance of us having privacy this entire trip." "That's ridiculous," he scoffed. "Why would she do that?" "Because she can't stand not being the center of your attention," I replied. "Because she wants to make sure I know my place in the hierarchy of your life, which is firmly below her." David sat up, his expression hardening. "You're overreacting. She's just being mom." "And that's the problem," I said, suddenly too tired to argue anymore. "You think this is normal? You think it's okay for your mother to intrude on our honeymoon, our privacy, our intimacy?" "Emma, I'm going to take a shower," I interrupted, gathering clothes and escaping to the bathroom before he could see the tears forming in my eyes. Under the hot water, I let myself cry silently, mourning not just our ruined honeymoon but the realization that this was my future. A lifetime of Carol's intrusions and David's excuses. A marriage where I would always come second to his mother's demands and sensibilities. I thought about my own parents. They had divorced when I was young, but even in their separation, they had modeled respect and boundaries. My mother had remarried when I was in college, and my stepfather had never tried to parent me or tell me who I should be. They had given me space to become myself, to make my own choices and mistakes. Looking back, I realized that's what had drawn me to teaching art, the joy of helping young people express themselves authentically, find their own voices. Where was my voice in this marriage? I stayed in the shower until the water ran cold, until my skin pruned and my tears dried up. By the time I emerged, David was asleep, or pretending to be. I slipped into bed beside him but couldn't bring myself to touch him. I didn't sleep that night. I watched the ceiling fan turn lazily above us, listened to David's breathing, and thought about what I wanted, what I deserved, what I could live with. By morning, I knew. At 5 a.m., I slipped out of bed and packed a small bag with essentials. I called the front desk and asked for a separate room, as far from our current suite as possible. The night manager was discreet, asking no questions as he processed my credit card and handed me a new key. "Villa 28, he said quietly. "On the far side of the property. Very private." I thanked him and retreated to my new sanctuary, a small but beautiful garden villa with its own plunge pool and high walls ensuring no one could look in. For the first time since arriving in Bali, I took a deep breath that didn't feel constricted by Carol's expectations or David's compliance. I called a lawyer back home who specialized in annulments. It was evening there, but she answered, listened to my situation, and agreed to prepare the paperwork. "Marriage entered under false pretenses," she said matter-of-factly. "Your husband misrepresented core values around family boundaries. Given the brief duration, you should qualify for annulment rather than divorce." I thanked her, provided my credit card details, and hung up, feeling lighter than I had in days. I sat by my private pool as the sun rose, illuminating the tropical garden around me in golden light. Birds sang in the flowering trees, and the scent of frangipani hung in the air. Paradise, finally, even if it was a solitary one. Around 8 a.m., my phone exploded with notifications. David had woken up and discovered me gone. There were missed calls, frantic texts. "Where are you? Are you okay? Mom's worried. Please call." I replied with a single message, "I'm safe. I need space. Please respect that." He didn't, of course. By noon, he had located me, having pressured the front desk staff into revealing my new location. He appeared at my villa door, face flushed with worry and frustration. What the hell, Emma? You can't just disappear like that. I stood in the doorway, not inviting him in. I needed space. So you moved out in the middle of the night? Do you know how scared I was? His voice cracked with genuine emotion, and for a moment, I wavered. Then I remembered Carol barging in on our most intimate moment, and David laughing it off. I'm sorry you were worried, I said, keeping my voice steady. But I'm not sorry I left. He ran a hand through his hair, the familiar gesture of avoidance. Is this still about my mom? She feels terrible about last night. She wants to apologize. I almost laughed. This isn't about last night, David. It's about every day since we arrived. It's about the fact that your mother booked the room next to our honeymoon suite without telling us, that she got a key to our room without permission, that she has interrupted and controlled every moment of what should have been our time. She was just... Don't, I interrupted. Don't say she was just being nice or just excited or just anything. Her intentions don't matter. What matters is that she violated our privacy repeatedly, and you let her. He stared at me, finally seeming to grasp the gravity of the situation. What are you saying? I took a deep breath. I'm saying I didn't marry your mother. But it's become clear that she's part of the package deal. A package I didn't sign up for. We can work on boundaries, he offered, a note of desperation entering his voice. I'll talk to her. For real this time. It's too late, I said quietly. I've already contacted a lawyer. The annulment papers will be ready when we get home. The color drained from his face. Annulment? You're not serious. I am, I replied. I didn't marry the man I thought I did. The David I fell in love with would have protected our time together, would have seen the problem with his mother booking the adjoining room, would have been outraged when she walked in on us. This is insane, he said, his shock turning to anger. You're throwing away our marriage over a bad honeymoon? I'm not throwing away anything, I corrected him. I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing a future where I'm not constantly competing with your mother for priority in your life. So that's it? You decide it's over and I don't get a say? You had your say when you laughed off every boundary violation, I pointed out. When you chose your mother's feelings over your wife's needs. Again and again. He stood there, speechless, as the reality sank in. Go enjoy Bali with your parents, I said finally. That's clearly who you wanted to honeymoon with anyway. As if on cue, Carol appeared behind him, slightly out of breath as if she'd been hurrying across the resort grounds. There you are. We've been looking everywhere. She looked past David to me, her expression shifting from concern to disapproval. Oh, Emma? This is so dramatic. We were just trying to be close to you. I didn't respond to her. Instead, I looked at David, waiting to see if now, finally, he would stand up to her intrusion. He didn't. He just stood there, caught between us, saying nothing. I think you should both leave, I said quietly. We're family, Carol insisted, stepping forward. Family works through problems together. I started to close the door. Goodbye, Carol. Goodbye, David. You're making a terrible mistake, she called as the door swung shut. He'll never find someone who loves him like I do. That, at least, was true. I spent the remainder of my time in Bali alone, and it was glorious. I took a cooking class by myself, learning to make satay and nasi goreng from a Balinese grandmother who clapped sympathetically when I explained in broken Indonesian that I was suddenly traveling solo. I hired a driver to take me to temples and rice terraces, stopping whenever I wanted to take photos or simply admire the view. I had spa treatments and read books by my private pool and ate at small local warungs where the food was spicy and authentic. David called 17 times. I didn't answer. He left messages ranging from angry, "You're being completely unreasonable," to pleading, "Please, Emma, we can fix this," to defeated, "I don't understand how it came to this." Carol sent a single text, "When you've calmed down and realized what you're throwing away, we'll be waiting." David deserves better than this behavior. I changed my flight to leave 3 days early and didn't tell any of them. By the time they realized I was gone, I was halfway over the Pacific, watching movies and sipping wine, feeling lighter with each mile between us. The annulment was finalized 3 months later. David contested it initially but eventually conceded when my lawyer presented documentation of the honeymoon situation, including texts and emails that demonstrated the pattern of boundary violations. He sent flowers afterward with a note saying he'd set boundaries with his parents and wanted another chance. Too late. Those boundaries should have existed before we said I do. I donated my wedding dress to a charity that provides gowns to low-income brides. I changed apartments, took a summer position teaching art at a camp in New Hampshire and slowly rebuilt my life as just Emma Richardson, not Emma Almost Walker. Last I heard, David is dating a girl who thinks his mom is so sweet and involved. They go on vacation together, all 3 of them. Sometimes I see pictures on social media, Carol always in the middle, her arm looped possessively through her son's, his new girlfriend smiling too brightly on the other side. I don't feel jealous. I feel relieved. It's been 2 years since the Bali disaster. I've moved to a different city, taken a position as an art department head at a progressive private school, and bought a small house with a studio in the backyard where I paint on weekends. I'm dating occasionally, nothing serious yet, but I'm in no rush. Sometimes people ask me about my shortest relationship, and I laugh and tell them I was married for 3 days on paper, but in reality, it ended the moment Carol opened that connecting door. They usually think I'm exaggerating for effect, that no mother-in-law could possibly be that intrusive, that no husband could be that blind. Those people have never met Carol Walker. Last month, I received an unexpected email from Phil. Thought you should know, he wrote, Carol and David had a falling out. His new girlfriend, not so new anymore, I suppose, finally reached her breaking point after Carol rearranged their apartment while they were at work. She gave him an ultimatum: establish real boundaries or she's gone. He didn't say which option David chose, but the fact that Phil was emailing me at all suggested things hadn't gone in Carol's favor this time. I wrote back a brief, polite response: I'm sorry to hear they're going through a difficult time. I hope David finds his way. I meant it sincerely. Despite everything, I never hated David. I just couldn't be the one to fix him. Phil replied the same day: you were right to leave when you did. I should have stepped in more. Carol has always been challenging. I chose peace over principle too many times. It cost me my relationship with my son, and it cost him you. I sat with that email open on my screen for a long time, not sure how to respond to such unexpected self-awareness. Finally, I wrote, it's never too late to change patterns, Phil. For any of us. He didn't reply, and I didn't expect him to. Sometimes I think about what might have happened if I'd stayed, if I tried to make it work with David, to gradually establish boundaries with Carol over years of marriage. Perhaps we could have found some compromise, some middle ground where his mother wasn't quite so involved and I wasn't quite so resentful. But then I remember her standing in our honeymoon suite doorway, watching us in our most intimate moment, refusing to leave, refusing to even acknowledge the violation. I remember David's awkward laugh, his immediate defense of her behavior, his inability to see what was so glaringly wrong. And I know I made the right choice. Some honeymoon gifts come with strings attached. I chose to cut mine before they became chains. The funny thing is, I'm actually grateful for that disastrous trip now. Without it, I might have spent years slowly suffocating in a marriage where I always came second, where my boundaries were always less important than Carol's feelings, where David's conflict avoidance set the tone for our entire relationship. Instead, I got clarity in 3 days flat. Expensive clarity, to be sure. My half of that free honeymoon cost me thousands in flight changes and the private villa, but worth every penny. The night before my annulment was finalized, my mother called to check on me. Any regrets? She asked gently. I thought about it, genuinely searched my heart for any lingering doubt or sadness. Just one, I told her. I wish I'd left on day one, the moment I saw Carol and Phil standing in that doorway. I could have had 10 more days in paradise all to myself. My mother laughed. That's how I know you're going to be just fine. And I am. More than fine. I'm free. Sometimes the best gift life gives you is the opportunity to start over, to walk away from what doesn't serve you, to choose yourself when no one else will. My 3-day marriage taught me that lesson sooner rather than later. For that, I suppose I should thank Carol. But I won't. Some boundaries are worth keeping.